Welcome to our pod, and by that I mean on Wednesdays we read. I'm Hannah.
I'm Laura.
And we are two best friends who do a deep dive into a new book series, one book at a time. Right now we are reading through the Murderbot Diaries, and we are covering the characters in book one, All Systems Red. But before we get into that, Laura, what are you reading, watching, and or enjoying?
So I must be in my sci-fi era because
Ooh.
I've had this for a while on my Kindle, A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers.
You've had it on your bookshelves too.
Had it, the physical copy as well for a long time because I read this book the other day on my Kindle, absolutely loved it. And then you messaged me and we were like, hey, when you get home, open book 26 of your blind date with a book. And it was not shockingly, that book that I have decided to make my entire personality surround this book because it is so wonderful and beautiful and peaceful. And I love it so much. So the book is even just dedicated to anyone who could use a break. Oh. And I think that is so sweet. Let me make sure that, for anybody who could use a break is who the book is dedicated to. And I think that is so sweet. And honestly, the themes in this book of like nature and self-worth and purpose they're such like difficult things, but the way that the author writes about them are so beautiful. And I feel like everyone's always under like constant pressure to do, go. Mm-hmm. And this is definitely one of those books where when you're reading it, you kind of just feel at peace. And when you're thinking about the writing and the things that the characters are going through, you kind of reflect on yourself and can be at peace in your own life. And there was a quote I was going to just read from the book, and it really stuck out to me because I feel like everybody kind of struggles with like finding their purpose and everything. Mm-hmm. So the quote was, "It is enough to exist in the world and marvel at it. You don't need to justify that or earn it. You're allowed to just live." And I thought that was so beautiful. And I'm just going to make my entire personality about this book. So don't be surprised if I start like shoving it at people or just talking about it randomly, people on the internet, because I love this book so much.
Don't be surprised if I tell you all about this book. I will never stop talking about it. You got it for my birthday.
I will say, if this is my favorite book of the year, that will be hilarious to me because it's the first book I read.
I love it.
It will also be like, I hope it's not like the only good book I read this year, but it would be very funny to me if it's like, this is the best book I read the entire year and I read it the first week of the year.
I mean, that's sometimes how the world works, Laura.
I know.
It's just sometimes funny. It just hits you.
I don't know. Last year I had a really good reading year, though, so I have high expectations for this year as well.
I do feel like last year was the first year we had the podcast the entire year, and we got to stop reading Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time.
That was honestly a huge weight off my shoulders.
Yeah. So I think we both like enjoyed our reading experiences so much more once we got past the Wheel of Time of it all, where it's like every single month you have to have a huge chunk of a book. And we did that from like February to May, pretty much.
Well, yeah, because we started February of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we did Wheel of Time for over a year.
Yeah.
And like we had to take breaks obviously, but I don't think that people realize like what, especially like because spoiler, we were not always feeling it with that series.
Oh my God.
That it is a lot to trudge through a really big book when you are not really feeling it. And it's a lot to like, honestly, it's kind of like homework, and to like get through it even when you're like, we both work full time and everything, so we have things going on, and we also have like social lives and everything too. It's not like all we do is the podcast, unfortunately. But
I would love if we just did the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be amazing? But it's just like, it is actually very difficult to read 1,000-page book, 8,000-page book every month, and always be like super into it. And it just doesn't always work. That's why I think we have tried hard to like lean into picking shorter series or like pick series that we wanted to, taking breaks, pick series that we wanted to do for a while. So
yeah, I definitely feel that, but I do love the sentiment of like, that's something I've been getting into more, is the belief that existing is enough. Someone was talking
it's a really hard concept because it's just drilled into us that you have to have a greater purpose, you have to, you know, be this or that, and sometimes you can just be that.
Yeah, well,
or all the time you can just be, not even sometimes.
I was actually listening to a podcast today that made me think of it, because last year my longtime therapist told me to read The Power of Now, and I finally did it. She'd been telling me for years to read it, and obviously I didn't, because when your therapist says something will help you, you try to fight against it. It's just normal.
Avoid immediately.
That won't help me. I'm special. Right. My hurt and pain is different than other people's, obviously. And The Power of Now was all about like getting away from even like yourself, your body self, and your spirit self, and learning that like there's a self outside of your own existence that is fine and at peace in the world. And if you could just get to that, about thinking about that, you can understand that this is all just in the moment and it'll pass, and like time is not what you think it is. And it's all about kind of coming to peace with the fact that like your presence on earth is fine. Like it's just fine. You need to let go of the ego. And then I was listening to You're Wrong About podcast, and she was talking about her experience on hallucinogenic mushrooms. And if you can tell from me calling them hallucinogenic mushrooms, I've never done them, but
I love to eat mushrooms.
I do love mushrooms. They're delicious. And to
mushrooms
me,
are honestly something that I eat all the time.
But she talked about how like the death of the ego before the death of your actual self is probably like the most powerful thing you could do. And that is like her experience with mushrooms, was it kind of taught her to get outside of herself. And I was like, oh, that was kind of like the flavors of The Power of Now and the flavors of what you're talking about with this book, where it's like, this is for people who need a break, and like existing is enough. And like something my therapist always tells me when I go see her, is like, you're exactly where you need to be. And if you can accept that, like it lets go of like your past where you have regrets, or your future where you have anxiety, like you're exactly where you need to be in this moment, because you exist in this moment, and that is enough. So I love really that.
Like everybody's always trying to like I said, like we all are like, oh, we only have this much time to do this. We only have this much time to do that. And honestly, time is something we made up. So like there's infinite time to do things.
Especially
so there's
white people really made up time, because like lots of people talk about how white people are the ones who are like, you have to be on time, you have to be this, where like a lot of other cultures it's perfectly acceptable. And like I've learned that about even other cultures who, you know, like Italians. Like I once went to pick up something from my mom's friend who lives in Italy. I was not in Italy, unfortunately. I was at her mother's house. She's from America, but she like sat me down on Christmas Eve, and I was like there for an hour and a half, and I like didn't have my phone on me because I thought I was just dropping something off. And like my mom was sitting there being like, where's Hannah? Like she had 2 errands and she's supposed to be back here, but it's like, in my mom's mind, it's like, you're supposed to do this, and it's Christmas Eve and get back. But like in other cultures, it's like, no, it's about the moment, and things happen when they happen. And I do think it's very American to be obsessed with time and being able to contribute.
I would agree with that. I also just think though, it's like one of those things where people are constantly worried about like, oh, it's too late for this or too late for that. And it's also a thing where I think like there's always time for you to, if you want to pick up a new skill or learn something new or do this or that, there's plenty of time to do it. And it should just be something that you want to do. You shouldn't feel pressured. So yeah, this book is excellent. Just a little like context about it. It follows sibling Dex, a monk who is a tea monk, and they are traveling, trying to go somewhere where they can hear crickets. And the world has unfortunately changed a lot. Ecosystems have changed a lot, so there aren't really any crickets, they find out. And so they are trying to travel to like the farthest place that they can think of that might actually have some crickets, and they come across a robot, and robots have not been seen in Panga for a very long time. So they end up kind of traveling together, the robot being curious about sibling X, and it's just a really, really beautiful story. And I need to get my hands on the second one ASAP because I need more now.
I've been trying to hunt down the books for our season 4 showdown. And as we all know, Laura pitched a Becky Chambers novel series.
Yes.
And I went to the library to find it, and I cannot find A Long Way to a Far Angry Planet anywhere. I found the second and third book, so I might go back to that particular library and just take a picture of 2 and 3, which is what I did with Brandon Sanderson, Mistborn. So no harm, no foul. I was just trying to see if I could find it. But I saw the Psalm for the Wild Bill, and I was like, oh, good. Like, and then in the back of my mind, I thought, oh, Laura's supposed to be reading that. I hope she opens my book before she does that. And then I left, and literally later that night, I was like, why didn't I grab that? Like, it was right in front of me. I could have read that book.
Yeah, you could have finished it so quickly.
I know. And so I was so upset with myself that I didn't grab it. Now I'm even more upset with myself because Laura loved it. So are you watching anything good?
Something else that I'm really enjoying that you could get on at any time, I don't think there's any wait line for it, is The Circle.
Oh, thank you. We've talked about this. You will watch The Circle for me, and I will watch Ginny and Georgia for you. And that is called content.
Yeah, I guess that's a trade-off that we'll have to make. But I just wanted to point out, so like The Circle first season, everyone was very nice to each other. Second season, there is definitely a shift in the dynamic where there is a lot of drama. And the first season, I was shocked by how it was all like, yeah, we're all in this together, and they were just like so nice, and they would get all upset when one of them would leave or get voted off or whatever. This time, they're like being strategic and trying to get certain people out, and I'm just baffled by it. My husband can't believe that I like this show. Just like, I can't look away. It pulls me in.
So what exactly is going on in The Circle? Because I feel like we've talked about it a little bit, but I don't think you've gone into the concept.
For those who do not know The Circle, it is a reality TV show surrounding social networking. There's this social network called The Circle, and all these people are put into these little apartments, and they're not allowed to talk to each other except through The Circle social networking. And some of them are catfishing, some of them are portraying themselves exactly, some of them are like kind of melding themselves into a little different version, because some of them are like, oh, well, this is my picture, but actually I'm not a model, I'm a teacher or whatever, you know, so that kind of thing. So there's all these different variations that people are trying to present of themselves. And then what happens is they end up ranking each other from first to last in how well, like by how much they like each other. And generally the people that are the top 2 are chosen as the Circle influencers, and they get the little blue check mark because they're fancy. And then they get to
they paid
decide,
$80 a month, Twitter rules.
I don't know that there's any payment besides the winner gets paid.
I'm joking.
But,
I was making...
I know what you're referencing. I will not give that man the credit. The Circle is much better than him. But so like the influencers then get to generally, unless sometimes they change up the rules, they get to decide who gets blocked from the Circle, and then they kind of whittle it down until there's just like 4 or 5 left, and then they rank again and see who the winner of the Circle is. But it's very strategic. They're all kind of like joining little private groups, and like there's often like, oh, girl gang group, or there's a like they come up with all sorts of different groups and talk to each other, or they private message just one-on-one and dish on each other, that kind of thing. And it's just interesting to watch, because generally I don't know that I would be able to just like start up conversations without they don't have any topics or anything. They're just like thrown into this, you know, because I was thinking, oh, like Bookstagram I guess would be kind of comparable in like the book community that you're on online. But then I was like, no, but you have an actual topic, because people can say, oh, well, yeah, I've read that book, and you can actually talk about something. These people go into the Circle and they have to try and form connections. It's basically just like, hey,
hey, hi.
Isn't it so weird that we're all here? It's so nice that we have these genuine friendships, and it's like, do you barely know anything about each other? You have to maybe trust that that Rebecca is maybe a chef or whatever. Like it's mind-blowing to me, but
guys, I'm pretty sure this is Laura's worst nightmare.
What's that?
Your worst nightmare, idle chit chat.
Yeah, I mean, probably not as bad online, but
yeah,
it still seems difficult to. And yeah, I don't know. I'm impressed and also amazed by them at times. So the second season, though, is definitely a little more tense than the first season.
I feel like that usually happens with reality television, though. Like the first season's always like you have to have people who are kind of on board for something that might flop. And so it's a lot more like, oh, well, you don't know. Yeah. And like, I mean, I follow a girl on TikTok who met her fiance on like a reality television over like a holiday thing. And it's like on HBOmax, but they met on like the first season. And then I think the second season, it's people who are like, ooh, the show's getting some traction. Maybe I can get a little bit of like followers and Instagram following and all that stuff. So I think sometimes that can happen from first to second season as well. I don't know.
And that may be the case too. And also Lance Bass is in the second season. So they do try to pull some celebs in. So
tricky.
Shocker, spoiler, it's not Lance Bass.
Oh wait, I honestly thought you meant as the host. I didn't realize someone was pretending to be Lance Bass.
Someone is pretending to be Lance Bass. It's his assistant who she does know a lot about him. But the thing is, it's like,
honestly, not as bad as I thought.
It's easy for the people to kind of poke holes in it, though. But also the ways that they're trying to poke holes in it, I'm like, that's kind of a reach. Because they'll be like, oh, I saw you when you performed in Atlanta in 1999. You were wearing a black jacket. Do you still have that and know where I can get one? And this assistant has been with him for like 20 years.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, I don't remember that jacket. She goes, I don't know that Lance would remember that either. But she's like, well, I guess people have these memories of this or whatever. And she says, I think says something like, oh, that's a great venue, but maybe my sister has that jacket. And then the person on the other line, like end of the message was like, oh, obviously that's not Lance Bass because that jacket didn't exist. And I'm like, that doesn't actually prove anything. They didn't say like, oh yeah, like I totally remember that jacket. They just said maybe my sister has it. Like,
I do think sometimes like there is something to, you have to be able to answer the question, like how would Lance Bass answer? Like, is he a person who would pretend that he knew what you were talking about, or is he a person?
Well, and that's why I feel like
admit to like not knowing.
It's difficult too for this assistant to play the show because these people feel like they all know Lance Bass if they know who Lance Bass is. You know what I mean?
Right.
Where they like have a relationship, quote unquote.
I know Lance Bass, and Lance Bass would never lie to me about the black
Lance Bass watched me go to sleep for years. He was on my wall. I know exactly what he's like. And it's
how dare you pretend differently.
Right. The assistant will respond to things and they will kind of be like, Lance, that's totally not Lance. And it's like, well, it totally is not Lance, but actually this person probably knows how Lance would respond better than any of you. And you're just like, that's not Lance.
It's not Lance.
I don't know that you would actually know the way that you would respond.
It's not Lance, Laura.
It's not. It's really not. And also, she was caught like right in the beginning. They said something like, "Why are you on this show? You better be donating that money to charity." And she like jokingly said something like, "Oh, thinking about using the money for another tour, LOL." But it fell so flat because nobody like got that it was a joke. And,
oh God.
And so then they were all like, Lance Bass would not have to compete on the circle to get money for another tour. It's like, obviously it's a joke.
LOL, guys. LOL.
So you can't pick up on the tone when you're reading something in text. Like, but
that's funny. I love that.
I'm watching all of the circle for you, Hannah. Hannah, what are you reading and watching?
So for reading, I finished book 2 of The Sandman.
Okay.
It covers volumes 21 through 37, I believe, which was a funny number to me. I
ask a question? Does the TV show only cover the first book that I have borrowed from you?
Yes. There's
Okay.
Well, I haven't finished the July. I haven't finished the TV series yet.
Oh, you haven't finished the TV series? Oh my gosh.
No, I needed to take a break because there was too much Sandman in my life when I watched.
Oh.
Like there were circumstances I couldn't quite finish it.
Okay.
So like I'd read the book and then I immediately started watching the television show, and I was like, it's almost too dry to watch in television format after just reading the book, where you're just like watching a very one-to-one adaptation, very similar. And so I was like, I can't do this. And so I did stop watching it, but I do believe it only covers like most of the events of book one. I can't remember if I can't remember if it like stops partway through book one. I'm guessing it does. Because book one covers quite a bit, but it does, it's a chunker. Yeah. But I don't think anything in book two is touched upon in season one.
So if I need to get a salmon fill, I should just start reading the books then.
Yes, you can start reading book one. And so I finished book two. I really liked the opening storyline because like these were volumes that were put out over a long period of time. So that is fair. But like I really enjoyed the first couple volumes because it kind of deals with like hell. Like we saw Lucifer in book one, slight spoilers. They bring Lucifer back. I prefer the series Lucifer because it is a woman, and in the book it is a white man. And, you know, I like some of the stuff they're doing with the show.
Gwendolyn Christie.
I know, she's amazing. And they always talk about how beautiful Lucifer is. And I'm like, thank you for noting that woman is gorgeous.
Oh, who didn't say she was pretty?
Well,
or who said she wasn't pretty?
I think people say she's pretty, but like, you know how in some TV series people pretend like she was Brienne of Tarth. And
so because she was strong, she also
couldn't
in the be books, attractive.
It's in the books. Brienne is also like supposed to be incredibly homely. And so people who watched the show, who had read the books, who were super fans, were like, oh, the casting's excellent. And it's like, except she's gorgeous.
Except that's not true. But whatever.
Except she's gorgeous. And like, she just didn't have as much makeup on as other women on the show. Like
they threw her in a bear pit and then like rubbed some dirt on her face. And they're like, oh, yes.
Oh my God, she's so gross. And it's just like, no, she's amazing. And you guys could never. And
amazing in Wednesday. Throwing that on there.
Yes.
Hitting on Netflix hard lately.
She's amazing. So I really liked that storyline. I will say, because like Sandman, these are lots of volumes that were put over the course of the year. Some of the volumes are more boring than others. And there are parts of it that dragged where I was like, I understand that this is historical
ask which
context.
Ones you don't like?
Not all of them. Some of the historical like pasts of Dream fall a little flat for me. Like if they don't have like actual context of like, this was his personality back then, to like kind of have the juxtaposition for how he grows, even though he's not supposed to grow because he's an eternal being, you know, all that stuff.
Sure.
I'm interested in that stuff. And like some of the stuff from book one came to pass in book two, which is also awesome. Like where certain characters got brought back, certain characters that we like glanced upon come back in a bigger way, you know? And I was like, ooh, I love this. But sometimes they would have like historical things where like, I kind of was just like, okay, this is a cool story, but couldn't we have just like put them at the end where they're all together? Did we have to like disperse them the way we did? And it's like, yes, they did, Hannah, because they're putting them out by publication date. Yeah. That's how they chose to do this. But in my mind, sometimes I get a little bored, but I enjoyed the book a lot. It was really good. And I'm really enjoying the Sandman. I will say like, Sarah from Fiction Fan said she doesn't love the artwork. It is pretty old school artwork, Laura. It's like very 80s comic book.
I'm going to agree with Sarah because I started looking at it and I don't know why, but it just like doesn't work for my eyes very well. Like it's hard for me to see or something. I don't know what it is, and the text is a common text that they use in graphic novels, but it's like more difficult to read in this style of art than other books. I don't know why.
I will say
I'm going to second that to Sarah.
And I like the stylistic choices as you go on, because like certain characters get different bubble formats, and I enjoy seeing that because I'm like, oh, that's who this is right now.
Well, yeah, then you can differentiate between characters. That's nice.
But I get what you guys are saying, because sometimes the text is a little bit like mishmash. But I think sometimes when it comes to graphic novels, I'm not as art focused as other people are, which isn't a good thing
Mhm.
on my part, but it's just not something my brain notices. So a lot of times I'm like, oh, a pretty color. That's okay. Or, oh, I
Mhm.
can't understand that photo. Okay. And then I'll just move on with my life. Um, but that also means sometimes I think I lose certain aspects because I don't
Mhm.
notice the artwork as much. But it's neither here nor there. Read the books you like and the way you like them.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
but I finished that. Can't wait to read book 3 to see as this continues on the journey. And I do need to finish season 1. And then for what I'm watching, I haven't really watched that much this week. I'm trying to think. I guess I'll just do another. I'm currently reading The Plus One by Mazey Eddings. It comes out in
Okay.
April, I believe. It is a romance novel.
Mhm.
Where a girl named or a woman named Indira gets broken up with after she finds out her boyfriend's having an affair, and she has to move in with her brother right before his wedding, and his best friend who is working like as a crisis doctor, like in all these
Mhm.
other, like in all these locations. Sorry, I'm not saying this well. He works in like emergency and humanitarian crises to help pay off his debts.
Okay.
He's coming back for the wedding, and they both like don't get along, and they grew up together. Um, and they fall in love through a little bit of fake dating, a little bit of just like close proximity. Uh, and she's like a psychiatrist who notices like he's not doing well because he keeps having to
Okay.
go to these like, humanitarian crises locations, and he
Yeah.
has a lot of guilt.
That would be really difficult.
And it's incredibly interesting because there's a lot of it that like I can feel when I'm reading it.
Mhm.
And I like a lot of what the author's doing. Like, for example, at one point, Indira is talking about Jude, who is the love interest.
Mhm.
And she's like, I don't want him to see me as his psychiatrist. Like, I want to be there for him and I have feelings for him, but
Mhm.
I do not
Mhm.
want to be the person he turns to for like actual mental health. That's not my
Sure.
job. And later he says the same thing. And I'm like, oh, that's so smart because lots of books do that wrong. Like,
Yeah.
lots of people are like, I can fix him. Where she's like, no, I want to be there for him and support him and understand, but like, I can't be the person who helps
Mhm.
him through like a mental crisis. That is something he needs a
Right.
professional for who can help him. I love that. I love that Jude has a lot of guilt over doing what he does for the purpose of not being in student debt.
Mhm.
They talk about that where he's like, I do want to help people, but I also feel guilt that I like took this job away from someone who might have been better equipped, who wanted a job like this.
Yeah.
And I feel bad that I did this for money purposes. And I'm like, ooh, Jude, you're hitting me in all the guilty feels about what I did after law school. Like, there's so many things you have to do to keep yourself afloat in like the real world.
Yeah.
Um, and I greatly appreciate that. So overall, like the book, I'm up over 50% of the way through, so I'm enjoying it a lot. I will say like some things fall a little bit flat for me. Again, her brother is a surgeon, so he works crazy hours and he's planning a
Mhm.
wedding. So he probably can't be the most supportive friend, but like his sister keeps being like, hey, dude, have you noticed like something's wrong with Jude? And he's like, he's fine. And it's like, that's your best friend. You should check in on him.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating where it's just like these two best friends are best friends on page only, it feels like.
Yeah. Sometimes in romances they do this where they're like trying to add in layers to the main characters and they give them a best friend or a family member, and a lot of times it's a more distant family member.
Right.
It's usually not like a immediate family member. It's like an uncle or an aunt or something. I'm sorry, I'm losing my voice here. But it's almost like they don't have anything to really add to the story except this person needs someone else in their life.
Well, there's like a moment where he gets mad at them because like it's Halloween or whatever, and they like fail to watch the outside, so the house gets vandalized by kids because they do it every year.
Oh geez.
And he gets mad at them, but like the sister put a note out on the door to be like, hey, doorbell's broken, because like the doorbell was setting off like Jude's anxiety. And he like couldn't handle the noise and the pressure of like all of a sudden like all this movement and stuff. So she did it to help him. And I'm like, why didn't you guys tell him that?
Right.
This seems like a pretty basic like fix. And it was almost treated like a, haha, isn't this so cute? And I'm like, not really. Like
No.
there is a very specific reason this is happening. And I don't get why you're reacting this way. So there are those things that I don't love, but also like in the scheme of things, that's a very minor nitpick. It's a little bit on the steamier side for you, Laura. So make sure you have the high threshold. Don't read it after Bridgerton. And I will say that there are 2 other books. This is the first one I picked up, but there are 2 other books in the series. So if this book sounds like it's on brand, I do know that the author is a neurodivergent dentist.
Okay.
So the first book kind of looks a little boring and has a lower rating on Goodreads. And she's in this book. And honestly, I do not remember any time she is on the page. So you probably don't need to read A Brush with Love. She seems like a perfect like first book main character where it's like, I'm anxious and I don't want to fall in love, but look at this boy who's so nice and I'm so nice. And now we're together, you know? Sure. But the second book I'm actually really interested in reading. It's about a girl who like has severe ADHD that's like kind of uncontrollable. And she makes like lots of mistakes. So she has a one night stand and she gets pregnant with this like guy who's kind of a rake named Rake.
He's named Rake?
He's named Rake.
That is a red flag.
And maybe like maybe he's not a rake. It kind of seems like he's probably a nice guy. At one point in the book I'm reading, she calls him a himbo. So he might be really sweet, but he's like sworn off love. But she gets pregnant and he's like, oh, I want to be there for the baby. And then they fall in love during the pregnancy. And I'm like, oh, I'm kind of interested in reading that one. That sounds super cute. And kind of different for a romance novel.
That is like, different.
I like the sound of that. That sounds really sweet.
I noticed that like a couple of romance books are like starting to incorporate like single moms or dads into this. And I think that's kind of neat, you know, to have, I don't know.
I definitely like it. And they're in this book and they made me laugh and I was like, oh, I kind of want to read their romance. And I was like, who was the other one? And I was like, meh.
Right.
I don't know if I need to read the other one. These 2 are cute. But yeah, so that is the book I am reading right now. And then everyone just go watch TV shows like Sandman and apparently The Circle.
Is so good. Sandman. All of you people who have been bashing Sandman, the TV show, I cannot speak for the book yet, have been bashing the TV show, apologize immediately. Please call Neil Gaiman and apologize to him.
Call him. And then get him on the phone with other people.
And apologize.
But yeah, overall, I've been having a good time. I haven't really watched anything as of late, but that's okay.
It is what it is.
I will be probably watching Ginny and Georgia. I did watch I watched the trailer for it and I thought maybe I don't need to watch season 2.
You're so strong. I can't get over how brave you are.
But I considered watching season 2. That mom has the worst accent.
Are so brave.
In the trailer, she literally goes, "Do you want me to kill him?" And Ginny goes, "That's not funny." And she goes, "It's a little funny." And I'm like, why is her accent so blatant? Like, why is it so broad?
And the thing is, it doesn't even seem like that good of an accent.
It's not a good accent.
It's like if I tried with my Midwestern accent to do a Southern accent and it sounded just terrible. And
it's a little funny. Oh God. And then like the girl who plays young Georgia, it's like that poor girl had to put on this woman's accent for some reason. Like, I don't know. I still may watch it. I haven't decided yet. We'll see, guys. It depends on how I feel in the moment, obviously.
I wish you nothing but luck.
Godspeed.
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 Have a light lunch.
If only I drank still. Should we dive into the episode?
Let's talk about Murderbot immediately.
Let's talk about Murderbot.
So I did want to mention something because one of our fans that we love, that Passage, mentioned that the audiobook of Murderbot Diaries All Systems Red is kind of difficult to get into. Hard agree. And I completely agree with what Pashat said about how it's probably an artistic choice on the narrator's part to sound like Murderbot. And this makes it very difficult to get into the book. However, when I was listening to it, because I listened to it before this episode, because it's a very short book to listen to, but just so I could kind of like refresh my memory or whatever of what happened. But if you bump it up to like 1.75 or maybe even faster, it's a little bit easier. But at 1 times the speed and even 1.25, it's hard to get into because it's very much like monotone and hard to pick up on some of the emotions that I think you get when you read the book with your eyes.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I like it.
Just wanted to mention that because I thought that was a really good comment.
Yes. I'm glad we know that because I hadn't really listened to the audiobooks yet, although I had like gotten the first one just in case a while back and then failed to actually start reading it.
Well, that's what I had done too. I had the audiobook as backup and then I was like, oh god, I have the physical copy. So that was just a reread that I listened to it.
Right. But good to know. Okay, who would you like to discuss first?
Let's talk about Murderbot because this is the character that we are getting the most from. It's Murderbot.
I love me some Murderbot. I love it so much.
Murderbot.
Murderbot is Emperor.
I am Murderbot. Murderbot is me. Do you remember when I was just talking a little bit ago about like, I think this circle would be really hard to like have these conversations with people.
Laura's worst nightmare is idle chit chat. That is what I said.
I really need to get one of those like helmets that Murderbot has to cover my face. Walk around. Murderbot is like the introvert hero that I have needed for so long. I never get characters like that just outwardly say like, I don't really want to talk to you. I feel uncomfortable with that. Oh, you're looking at me. No.
Yeah, I think Murderbot is like such an interesting character because it is very introverted. It is so thoughtful and sweet. Like it really cares about everyone. And like I don't know. I just love it.
And it's so
much.
complicated too because the other characters are kind of grappling with how to treat Murderbot because a little bit of fear, but also because Murderbot is caring and shows some sentience. And I think that this would have had a really different dynamic if Murderbot was just like literally the killing machine and had hacked the governor module. It's so interesting the way that it's portrayed.
So something I really find interesting about Murderbot is, and it's something I've been trying to delve into, like what it means to me. And it's like the difference between being human and humanity. Because I don't think Murderbot identifies as human, but I think Murderbot has a lot of humanity to it. Like it really cherishes humans at their level if they're being nice to it, or else it's like, I'm going to drop you. You do not seem great. But hey, same Murderbot. I also drop people who are not kind to me.
Sure.
But like, it seems to care deeply and it seems to want like, and I love that like the biggest thing about it is the whole like sometimes existing is enough. We talked about that theme. Like that is Murderbot's big identity is like, I don't want to do anything. And I don't want to live in a world where I have to do something. And isn't that okay? Like, why isn't that okay? Why do I have to exist for something? Like, can I have a job where it's just watching TV? And I think that is all like a very, like, it just delves very much into the like humanity of Murderbot to have all those feelings and complicated emotions, even if it does not make it human at all, which I don't think it should be. Like, I think that there's a delineation there and maybe humanity is the wrong word, but like, I think people love Murderbot because of like the deep sense of self it has. And like, it's so intelligent. It has great logic, like where it's like, the company's not going to do that. Come on, guys. And
it sees things for exactly how they are. Like it knows exactly what it likes and what the people in the group, like what their dynamics are, like what the strengths and weaknesses are. It knows all about the company, and it can easily like identify in situations, like you said, like the company will not do that because they would lose money. So obviously that's not what's happening. So it's a really interesting character. And it also grows as a character too, which is fascinating.
I know.
Because it has to struggle with, I think, really its own self-worth.
Yeah.
And recognizing like, hey, even though I'm a murder bot and I'm often basically bought for contracts, and at the end is bought into essentially another contract with Dr. Mensah, Murderbot feels uncomfortable with that and decides that they're just gonna kind of sneak away.
I really love that was the ending of it, because a huge thing I did take a small issue with, like, this just felt icky to me, was like almost the way the humans around Murderbot like infantilized Murderbot in a way where they were like, well, don't you want to be free? And Murderbot's like, you guys don't offer freedom. You guys just offer a different form of slavery with a nicer phrasing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is key to saying you can survive in the system as an augmented being, but oh, by the way, you need a human to watch over you. Like there's a certain level of like guardianship that like Murderbot is obviously uncomfortable with, because it is like a living, like different entity being, and it's not human. So it's just like, well, you guys still think you have this ownership over like us, and that's not right. And so I found that incredibly fascinating. And like, it goes to show some of the like flaws of the other people. Like, as much as I love Dr. Mensah, even when she like makes Murderbot, like she is Murderbot's favorite human. And she says things like, well, I want you to show your face because it makes them see you as human, which is the way I see you. Like there is that part of me that's like, ooh, but also shouldn't you guys just be able to see Murderbot for what it is? And like,
like why do you have to see a human face?
And that's like, it's a very human thing to do, to be like, we need to see that you're like us to identify you as something
to
that's
actually
worthy
respect you.
And like, it would have been better to be like, we need to see your face, because if there's other Murderbots, we need to see how you guys be able to
identify between you.
And like Murderbot felt very touched by that moment, but Murderbot also does recognize where it's like, and you want to be my guardian, like you want to do these things, and like Murderbot doesn't like showing its face, and it wants to be kind of kept, like it wants to be respected, which is what it got from Mensah, but it was a form of respect that I was like, oh, you're so close, but not quite there. Like,
and this is definitely where you get into kind of like the well-meaning character of Dr. Mensah, where Dr. Mensah is well liked by Murderbot and the members of the crew, and is capable and seems kind, but at the same time just kind of misses the mark with the actions that she takes at the end, and actually throughout. She just kind of misses the mark with how she treats Murderbot, and it's tricky. It's really tricky to put yourself in that situation and be like, oh yeah, that's not what you should say, or that's not what you should do, Dr. Mensah.
Right. And it's, it's like one of those things where it's like, it sounds like you're at the first step, but Murderbot is way past you on the steps of stuff. So, and that's, talking about, and I did want to flag, we also had a listener, GJ, they sent us the message because you and I had talked about the potential ickiness with Murderbot being seen as a neurodivergent like person, because again, Murderbot does not identify as human. And they said that like, it's unfortunately very common to have that as a stereotype. Yes. But Martha Wells did not intend for Murderbot to be coded as autistic, and anything was pretty accidental. So there isn't any ill intent, but that Murderbot, like lots of people see themselves as autistic people or people with autism in Murderbot. And so I do think that there is a certain thing of like, it's a both and situation is what I said.
So it's kind of like riding the line of being representation for a group of people that don't see themselves portrayed.
Yes. So I kind of said it's a both and situation where like, it sounds perfectly great to be like, to see yourself in Murderbot, because Murderbot is wonderful and thoughtful and smart. And like, it is a wonderful entity. And it should not be the end all be all for your
Yeah.
assessment into neurodivergency in literature. You should be looking at other things to make sure you're getting a well-rounded experience when it comes to that. So that
and
is
I think that actually
also
says something about, like, if the author did not intend that, maybe that's something that we as a society need to like think about too, that we're like, oh, is that supposed to portray this? Like, maybe we need to adjust the way that we're thinking about it, that we're like, oh, this is somebody that's neurodivergent, that's what that's supposed to mean. So maybe we need to adjust the way that we're thinking about it.
Yeah.
So a good point. I'm glad that was brought up. Good message.
Yes, it was a great message. So I enjoyed that, and thank you so much. And I wanted to flag that for our Murderbot discussion on Murderbot itself. So should we move on to Dr. Mensa?
Well, I was just going to ask like what you thought of Murderbot's like humor and also apathy with certain situations. Like Murderbot does not care about reading the directions of things, like getting some of the background that it probably should have read up on, like, oh, Dr. Mensa is actually a very important person. This is the strategy we're going to take with this. Murderbot was just like, that seems boring. I want to watch Sanctuary Moon.
As someone with ADHD, same Murderbot, same. Like, I would do that I would do that in a heartbeat. If I don't have to read something that sounds kind of boring, I'm gonna do it.
Definitely just one of those, like, you scroll to the bottom, click accept on terms and conditions, and move to the next thing. So relatable, Murderbot.
Well, especially when Murderbot is like, I'm here for security. What does it matter? Like, it obviously does not matter if I know the intricacies of this group of people. And like, Murderbot isn't an idiot. Like, it always talks about like, well, that person's flirting with that person and that person's doing this. So like, it is able to assess social dynamics. And that's probably more important in a security than like having input facts about who is the leader of the group. Because like Murderbot knows.
It's like, just funny though that the context is something that Murderbot does not care about at all. It cracks me up how Murderbot can just be like, no, doesn't matter to me.
I love that Murderbot has the same thought process as you and I do about soap operas, which is like, this is fascinating. I'm going to watch.
Murderbot would totally watch The Circle.
Oh, Murderbot is like #1 fan of The Circle, and probably
Murderbot loves The Circle, and
could only last like 3 episodes with Ginny and Georgia, but for some reason kept it on in the background.
Sure. It has like, guys, like 7,000 hours downloaded. It definitely was gonna watch Ginny and Georgia.
Tweet at us the worst show that Murderbot definitely watched, because you know it watched it. But I love Murderbot's humor. It's so dry, it's so funny, and like,
and do you think that Murderbot is trying to be funny, or is just like not even trying to be funny? It's just how Murderbot is.
I think
that we find the responses funny, because I mean, I'll admit that a lot of times in my own life, I just say things in a certain tone and people will laugh at them because of the way that I say it, the delivery is there, and I'm not intentionally trying to be funny, but it just comes out in a way that makes people laugh, similar to how I react to Murderbot's responses a lot of times. And then also there are times when I feel like people do try to deliver these lines in a way that it's like, oh, I think they're trying to like get an emotional response, you know?
Yeah, I wonder if Murderbot intends to be funny. I've never thought about it. What are your thoughts on it?
I think it depends on the situation, but I think there were times when I was just like, is Murderbot making a joke? I kind of think so, especially when we are like literally in Murderbot's point of view. I feel like sometimes Murderbot's trying to appeal to us and like make levity of a situation.
Well, and if you think about it, like Murderbot is technically talking to Dr. Mensa. So I do think probably it is making some kind of joke.
Sure.
And or at least, I guess my problem is I always read a book through like, what did Martha Wells think? And I was always like, well, Martha Wells intended this to be humorous, but I didn't get to the point of like, well, is Murderbot intending to be humorous? But I don't know. I think it depends on the situation. I'm always just like
seeing myself as Murderbot, I guess, because to me, Murderbot is just so relatable. But I was often wondering about that. Like, do you think Murderbot is trying to be funny?
I think like in parts you're right, like it is trying to be funny. I think in things where it's like, well, I didn't read that. I don't think it's like trying to be funny in the way that you and I were like, oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
But like it definitely wants to be like have humor, because like when it like throws Grothin up a wall and it's like, come on, I didn't hurt you. Like, you know that like it kind of knows it's being humorous and
trying to play the situation.
Yeah, where it's just like, and it's like sitting there with its eyes closed and it's like, why do they pretend like I can't see everything? Like, I think Murderbot at least understands the humor in the situation when it's in the situation, but Murderbot prefers the drama, Laura.
I also will say that I noticed that Murderbot's tone is definitely not what you would expect of a robot. It seems, I mean, I know that Murderbot has more human qualities. We've talked about that, but it just is unique from the sense that you would almost expect more of a calculated and more statistical response. And you get more of just a Murderbot that you get more of Murderbot who is in itself just its own thing, where it's unlike the other sec units. It's, you know, it's its own thing. It is completely unique, and I think that's also really cool and kind of interesting in itself.
Yeah, I did note that, like, because I was interested, I looked up what like species Murderbot is, because that's what they call it on the wiki. And it is noted that Murderbot is a construct that is its species. So you and I, we've called it like android, we've called it, you know, the various things.
I just keep referring to it as Murderbot because like sec unit, I think, is what the company called it.
Right. Yes, like that's what, it's like one of its aliases, it says on wiki, but it's a construct. The other thing that's, and it does call itself a construct in the book. I do remember that word. So
the other thing that's so unique about Murderbot is like how it knows its own history and doesn't want to remove those memories of the bad things that it's done, but wants to kind of just sit with them and know that, yeah, I did that and I'm trying to do better. I'm not going to do that stuff again. And I think that's fascinating. I think the whole concept of Murderbot knowing what it has to do and what people sometimes make Murderbots do, make sec units do, is fascinating. So there's just so many dynamics to this really short book and that we get inside of this construct's head, and it's really fascinating.
I think I definitely agree. Murderbot is a very fascinating character, and its interactions with others is just incredibly unique. And I do think like this book packs a punch. Like we talked about, I had tabbed quite a few of them, quite a few sections, and a lot also dealt with like how people view Murderbot and like how this world interacts with entities like Murderbot, because I think that I can't wait to see what they do with more of the books as we go along, where they're like, oh, this time we're going to be looking at this and we're going to do this now. And
sure, when we're dealing with humans that are not as accepting, or maybe different species, not just humans,
or just different policies, because like there is a little bit of like world organizations where like Mensa's world sees entities as something that can have guardianship over, but they get to gain knowledge, which is also super interesting. Like that was such a fact that I was so fascinated by, that their world saw like other entities as being worthy of education, but not freedom. And it's, and again, it goes back to the guardianship where it's like, it's our purpose to make sure you find your purpose, and we will educate you, but it still goes into the, like, you must be educated so you can give back to society. And like, that leads it back to, you know, our discussion of it's okay just to exist. And that's like something that I think if you are a being that isn't free, and you are only free subject to getting an education,
what you can provide,
and what you can provide, that is not freedom. And I think that is something I hope we kind of play with in books to come, where it's just like, oh, that's a really fascinating thing, that like these entities do not have actual freedoms. They are still in effect like some type of slave, just with a better name and with one guardian rather than an entire system. And like I do think that that's important to have Murderbot be in it, like a construct that decided to keep its memories, because it also keeps the fact that like when it killed all those people, it understands that it wasn't its fault, but it also overrode its system so it wouldn't do it again. And it's like, I do not trust the company to keep me protected, so I must keep myself protected. And then all these other things were just a major benefit. Like, that's fascinating.
Right. Do you have anything else on Murderbot?
No, I loved this discussion though. We really went deep on Murderbot.
Well, I mean, Murderbot is the main character.
Well, and there's like, what can you say about, what can you say about Valescu and Bartouage?
Bartouage got hurt.
Murderbot
saved.
I honestly thought Bartouage was the man until I looked at the wiki.
I'm sorry. I thought Bartouage was also a man.
Bartouage is a woman. I'm almost positive we got Bartouage confused with Valescu, who is in fact a
Valescu and Arata.
Yes.
And then Garathan. Okay, so there's 8 of them, right?
Yes. Well, there's
Garathan, Mensa, Arata, Valescu, Bartouage, and then I'm missing 2.
Okay, known members. We have Mensa, Rathi.
Okay, that's one of them.
Pinley, Arata, Overse, Garathan, Bartouage, Valescu.
Overse. Overse is the one I was missing.
Overse, yeah. And then there are 2 more from this wiki, but I wonder if they're in the next books.
I think they pronounce it Overse in the
Overse
audio. If I'm remembering right.
So Bartouage is a woman who gets hurt.
Okay.
And that is
Valescu is the one that Murderbot talks through the situation and calms down. And I also thought that was a fascinating part too, where they have to maintain control of the situation and still try to get other people to kind of get back to baseline, so they can continue on with what they're doing and keep people safe. That was really a neat moment as well. Murderbot is the best.
Well, and I love Murderbot is the best. And like Valescu is also the one who defends Murderbot when Garathan is like, it's evil. And he's like, dude, like we found a bunch of information showing that it's not. Like, did you read it? And he's like, no, I acted like Murderbot. I read nothing. Like,
never.
So I do like that Valescu, they kind of show that like through Murderbot showing him humanity, he like shows Murderbot it in return. Again, you have the always assume that we have the philosophical big question of like, does Murderbot doesn't deserve to be treated like that just because it can look like a human. It deserves it in and of itself. But I do like that Valescu, after having that moment with Murderbot, that Murderbot doesn't even track as important. Like Murderbot reviews the footage and it's like, oh, he does have children? I don't remember any of his answers. I am just keyed in on making someone talk and I'm not listening. And I also have moments like that where like I'll be talking to someone and they're like, I'm having such a bad day. And I'm like, oh my God, really? What's going on? And like, you just kind of like, if you're working at the same time, you're like, I'm totally listening to you. And you're just like, not. So I do think that that is also a key function of just like watching Murderbot interact, as like, that's a key moment for us to know when we're learning about Murderbot, is like, oh, I had to ask him all these questions because that is what I'm trained to do. And it doesn't really matter. The whole point was to keep him talking. But that's Valescu.
I mean, I think most of the members of the team have a similar journey with Murderbot, where they're, like we've mentioned before, like trying to gain a sense of understanding for someone that is not human. And it's difficult for them to allow this being some independence within the mission, to not be like, no, you will listen to us. And to also at the same time be like, but we need to protect them like they protected us. So
well, and then we have Rathi, who is the one who is in polyamorous relationships. I did like that they
which Mensa is too, I think.
Yes, Mensa has
Mm-hmm.
two spouses, I believe.
Yeah.
But I liked that. I honestly really liked that as like a little nugget when they're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
Rathi has like multiple spouses.
Yeah.
And like I'm just like, oh, this is so interesting to see because again,
And
like
wasn't it one of them that was with like Pinley has like a flirty relationship with another one?
Pinley and Bartwash flirt.
Okay.
And an old comfortable way that suggests it's been going on for a long
For a
time.
long time.
For a
Mm-hmm.
long time.
But they're all friends.
But they're all friends and they get along. I did find it interesting. Like, I can't remember which one, but one of the characters like often talks to Murderbot about like, well, don't you want to be free? Don't you want this?
Isn't
Don't
that
you?
Rathi?
Okay, it is Rathi. Okay, thank you. Where Rathi like keeps asking Murderbot questions and Murderbot's like, leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I do find it interesting that they seem to want to learn more about Murderbot in that way. And like Murderbot can still have like good philosophical questions with them because
Right.
that is fascinating to me. And a little bit less like Murderbot seems to almost pull its punches with Dr. Mensa because it's such a fan of her and it's sending the transmission to her. So you do have to question like,
Sure.
did it redact anything that it said about you that wasn't as shining as you want it to be?
That is interesting. And it's,
yeah.
If you think about that as well, that because it's being sent to Dr. Mensa, maybe the thoughts on Dr. Mensa are not what we think. That maybe they just portray Dr. Mensa in a way that is like, oh, but Dr. Mensa is just kind of well-meaning person, but in reality, Dr. Mensa sucks.
Well, and not even that, but like there are moments where like I said, when Dr. Mensa is like, well, I see you as human, and Murderbot is like, well, I melted right there. And it's like, oh, that's an interesting reaction from Murderbot because Murderbot usually kind of has a little bit more biting sarcasm when it comes to that stuff. It's like, well, I am not human.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh,
never say that again.
Yeah. Like it's interesting that it might not be exactly how it feels about Dr. Mensa, and it might be pulling a few of the punches for her to like make her like it and not send people after it, you know?
Yeah.
So I'd be interested to see if that were true, because then you have a little bit of the unreliable narrator going on. So
fascinating.
And that's interesting too, because like we see that with Rathi, where like Rathi will say certain things and Murderbot will immediately be like, is that really free though, dude?
Yeah.
So there's a little bit more questioning coming through that character, which I liked to see. So yeah, should we talk about, I mean, the rest of them? I feel like Garothin is the big one before Dr. Mensa.
Garothin is interesting just from the fact or just from the standpoint of being an augmented human. And so I think that it's interesting that Murderbot and Garothin like have the most friction between them just because of that aspect. If it were another crew member, I almost kind of wish that the two that have the most in common didn't have this friction. You know what I mean?
Right. But I also
But it also makes sense.
Yes.
So
I think it makes a lot of sense that Garothin is the one who does that. Because if you think about it, in society, as an augmented human, he's probably looked down upon too.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where there are a lot of arguments that like some people who are in marginalized groups can often try to marginalize other groups more than them if they're like lower on the quote unquote like totem pole. So like, you know, similar to like the way we talk about certain people are like, well, I'm Italian, so I am, you know, not white. Or, you know, there are people who are like, well, I'm Italian, so I'm not white. But it's like, that is true, but you do have like certain benefits coming from not being a marginalized group. Like there are certain ways that like people can act towards the people they see lower than them. And I do see a little bit of that in Garothin, where it's like, if he has certain beliefs pushed on him, he's probably more willing to accept hatred of the like group he doesn't want to be a part of. And that's kind of what I got from him, where it was more like, you can't trust this. It like I may be augmented, but that just helps my natural abilities as a human. This isn't even human. Like there can be that kind of push and pull dynamic. So that's kind of what I pulled from him, was that like own a little bit self-loathing. And I didn't know, I wasn't quite sure. Does Grothin like have similar issues with his rights on the planet he's from?
I'm unsure. I thought that the crew was all from the same planet.
Preservation station. No, but it was more like he's not so augmented that he doesn't have rights and needs a guardian, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was a little bit confused.
But he is able to like hack into things and has like ports and stuff like that that are noticeable. So there are noticeable differences between augmented humans and humans. So.
Right. So I think he's interesting to show kind of like the caste system, for want of a better word, between like Murderbot to humans. And it's like, like people probably look down upon Grothin in different societies for being augmented, but he looks down on Murderbot because he doesn't think Murderbot has like the facilities to control itself. And if it wanted to hack its system, it cannot remove itself from what it was created to do. And I love that he's like, it calls itself Murderbot. And Murderbot's like, yeah, it's my name.
I literally just had a conversation about this the other day because somebody said something about like, oh, that's a weird name. And I was like, all names are weird. Like, who just like came up with the name Keith and was like totally normal, like, and nobody ever questioned like Keith is maybe kind of a weird name. Like,
that was something I was talking to with someone that was like, there was a right-wing pundit who was trying to make the argument that like, it's not that Black people get hired less because they have Black people names. It's because they have unprofessional names. And it's like, way to say the quiet part out loud. Like that is the implication of people stereotyping a name, is saying like it's unprofessional because it is a Black name that is not like seen as a standard westernized name. Like, holy crap, you said it. Like, and they tried to like have different names. And I was like, you want to know what's an unprofessional name? Hannah. Hannah sounds unprofessional. I'm sorry. It does if you say it enough. It's 6 letters. It sounds kind of stupid.
That's what I mean. Like all names are just
weird.
Like it doesn't. None of them make sense. To just,
your name is like Gary. Laura? Like okay. Yeah, like that's my favorite murder sketch where it's like, could you imagine a baby named Gary? Like you just named that baby Gary. Like, how dare you?
Totally weird.
And so I do.
Names are literally all made up.
Names are made up. They don't make sense. I went on a rant today about people who name their son John Jr., but then they give him the nickname Jack because they cannot differentiate between the two names. And it's like,
that happens so much.
But Jack does not belong. Like, call him Johnny, call him JJ. I don't give a crap, but don't call him Jack. It has nothing to do with his name.
Well, then how do you feel about the Peggy Margaret situation? Because people who are named Margaret are often called Peggy. And that makes zero sense either.
I'm going to refrain from commenting on that.
It's mind-blowing to me. I know a few Peggys and their name is Margaret. And I'm just like, who came up with this? This makes zero sense.
Richard and Dick.
Like, I mean, honestly, that's slightly closer. At least there's an I.
Richard and Dick.
There's an I and a C.
Yeah, and that is ick. Okay, so let's not put the ick in Dick. Okay.
Names are weird.
Names are weird. Let Murderbot be Murderbot. Grothin is a weird name. Okay.
Yeah, Grothin. Weird name. Grothin. You have a weird name.
Yeah.
And then there's Dr. Mensa.
Yes.
Who is our well-meaning friend.
The well-meaning friend who still has to see Murderbot as human. It's just very interesting.
I will say I do like Mensa.
Yes.
And I wish her well. And I don't know that I would definitely not be opposed to seeing any of these characters again. I don't know if we will. But I would not be opposed to like seeing this crew again if they run into Murderbot or whatever. I think that would be cool. she were to be in contact with Murderbot or whatever, that'd be fine. And be interesting too to see, like what's the dynamic between them after she knows that Murderbot's been like, I felt uncomfortable with that, so I kind of bounced. But I do think that they're like, as a crew, they're likable, and I think Dr. Mensah especially is likable, and you really can find some value in her character for how she handles the situation and how she remains calm in tense situations and is very well trained and everything. And the way that she handles the crew is a really good thing. And also the way that she treats Murderbot is the best out of anyone, really, because she's generally the first to kind of make the plunge towards treating Murderbot with respect and not like just a slave, basically. But at the same time, when we get towards the end, thinks that Murderbot needs to have a guardian, and it's like, this system doesn't work for beings like Murderbot, even though you're trying to help it. This is not a helpful way to be. And like you mentioned previously, that Murderbot doesn't really think that there needs to be any kind of value placed upon them. It's life, that it feels totally fine just watching Sanctuary Moon and not doing anything else. It doesn't eat, it doesn't want to do any of these other things. It doesn't feel like it needs to learn. And those are things that Mensah kind of values and thought maybe it would want to do that. And it's like, no, it doesn't want to. If it wanted to, that would be fine, but it doesn't.
I do think this book is so fascinating, like philosophically. And I do hope we see more of Mensah, because I would be interested to see what she does in like upcoming books. Because I just think Dr. Mensah is a fascinating character when it comes to things like all of these philosophical questions, to see like what happens with a well-meaning person when like what will happen when she comes into contact with Murderbot again. And Murderbot like flatly was like, I don't want the life you said I could have. And how is she going to react? Is she going to react with like, oh, thank you for, telling me, I understand now? Or is it going to be more like, I put my neck out for you and you took advantage? And Murderbot's like, I didn't take advantage. I went on a ship and like, and it's like, well,
did what I needed to do to just keep going.
Yep. And that's like, friendships, just some of the biggest problems come because of money, and so like, is this like monetary issue going to be a bigger deal for Dr. Mensah than it should be? I'm very fascinated by that.
How did you feel about the way that like the company and capitalism were portrayed in the story?
I mean, I thought it was very well. I just think it was so good to be like, well, the company will like let you pay it off to like be secret and not tell anyone you're coming on here, but like they don't want to mess. And like the company cutting corners where like the Murderbot is like, well, it's like a 50-50 if this works. Like,
and also the way that Murderbot like evaluates the situation and handles it is very much in a way that prevents it from going to that point where it's like, oh, we have to get involved in a trial here, or we have to get insurance companies involved or whatever. So it's so strategic on Murderbot's part to be like, we're going to do it this way, so then I don't have to deal with these people.
Well, it's such a good expression of like a bottom of the totem pole worker for a company where people are like, look, it's just my job. I'm here doing my job. Can you not make me fill out the form because you did a slip and fall while I was on the schedule? Like, that's what we're hoping for. We're not hoping for the world to change. I just want to make it home at 5:00, guys.
Right.
Just let me do that, please. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I loved everything about that too. And all the points that Murderbot makes about the company are hilarious and spot on.
they're not going to waste money on you guys. Calm down. Like they're not going to murder you. They just poison
Right.
you. And
They just
everyone's
poison you.
sitting there
This is
like,
too complicated for them to do.
they poison us. And it's like, well, if they wanted to, but they don't want to, so
Right.
it's fine. And
There's
like,
too many lawsuits involved. They don't want to do that.
and just like, I loved the way this was plotted too, where Murderbot's like, well, I got a software update, not putting in that. And I like immediately was like, there's something bad in that.
Yep. I had the same thing where I was like, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Download
Don't
that.
do it.
Nope.
I didn't catch where like all of a sudden, like when it was doing the emergency situation, when it was like, don't help him. And Murderbot was like, I'm going to override that, obviously.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, didn't catch that one. But every other one, I was like, come on, Murderbot. Come on, don't do that. And then it never failed me. So I cannot wait to continue this series with you, Laura. This was
I think that
this
is. Oh, I'm so proud of myself for picking this book, but this definitely is a series that I think is going to like hit all these marks for us as far as sci-fi goes, where we start asking all these questions and kind of pushing the buttons like, is this what we should be doing? Do we need to think about this more? And I really like that.
I love that so much. And it's weird and it's fun. And I love that this was like a self-contained mystery almost, where that like,
yeah,
they were just like, hey, we need to get off this planet. Hey, we got off the planet. And I also love that like it took us out of my favorite thing, which is I didn't have to see any action.
I mean, there was a little action, but not a lot.
Murderbot immediately passes out and then gets woken up after the action is done. And I'm like, sold. This is exactly a Hannah book. Everything could take place off screen. It does not matter. So.
Yeah, it's definitely more about the other dynamics happening surrounding Murderbot than it is about the action or really the situation that takes place.
Right. Agreed. Well, everyone, make sure you join us next week to cover the next book in the series, which
and tell us what you think about Murderbot and All Systems Red.
Yes, you guys should tweet at us. Tell us the TV shows that Murderbot would be binging if Murderbot were on Earth. And make sure you're following us on our Discord. We're chatting on there a little bit more and more. So make sure you're over there. Make sure you're reading Artificial Condition next week. We're going to be covering the plot. And then also make sure that you are following us at Our Pod. That's OWWR Pod on Instagram and Twitter. You can go to ourpod.com to see what we're doing there. And on there, you can pull up our Patreon. We have a Patreon. This month we have an episode that has already been posted. We get one bonus episode a month if you are a number 2 listener or an extraordinary listener. We cover the Cynthia Nixon episode on Law and Order SVU. It is
a wild ride.
Hilarious. Laura and I died through most of it about people.
Is it hilarious or is it just
no?
A roller coaster?
Our episode analyzing it are hilarious. Okay. We are hilarious.
We are hilarious, and
as we
humble and
as we scream about Kathy not being old, aka Stapler's wife, because Laura had to look up her name afterwards. Apologies to that.
After we recorded the episode, I had Law and Order going in the background. It was like 2 episodes after that one, and Benson says, "How is Kathy?" And Stapler says, 40 and pregnant.
God, I hate that man. He's the worst.
Elliot Stabler.
But
go listen to that episode. We had a fun time talking about it.
We had so much fun doing that. We're going to do a bonus episode a month.
It won't always be Law and Order, we promise.
No, that's not the only one. I think next month I'm going to try to convince Laura to do the Ice Barbarian romance novel or the COVID romance novel to read that and review it.
Those covers.
Because I think it would be funny. But if you guys have any ideas, let us know. Tweet at us, Instagram, DM us, and sign up for the Patreon. We also have a casual listener, which lets you get in on the behind the scenes of the episode. We show different things that we talked about, ask questions, and, just generally chit chat over there. You also get to be on a private Patreon only Discord channel. So make sure you're joining over there. Sorry for all of this. I'll get better about doing all that housekeeping in the future. We're just so new at having a Patreon. And thank you everyone who signed up, including all of our extraordinary patrons, including Veronica and my boyfriend.
Nice. We appreciate it though. And you know what? We appreciate just anybody who listens and shares and talks about the show. Like, we really appreciate you guys interacting with us and talking about books with us and sharing our podcast. We have a lot of fun doing it. We want to keep doing it and producing content for you. So we really appreciate it.
Honestly, an amazing experience. I've had a ton of fun, and I've had a ton of fun here with my best friend Laura. So can't wait to keep making all this beautiful content for you guys. But join us next week, and until then, have a wonderful day. Bye.
Bye.